Okay, we have our IK system. We have a reverse foot system that has some nice automation in it. Now let's talk about getting our FK option in here. A nice blend for our FK chain. This set of manual controls is not used anymore, so I'm just going to bypass them. We don't need them anymore, so I'm just going to turn them off, but they'll be there if for any reason we want to go back to them. I personally like the reverse foot setup, the reverse foot node. It has a lot of automation in it. You can still get that manual input if you want to, just with these sliders instead of in the scene itself with the control handle. But even then, if you wanted to, of course, you can put down a rig pose node and put some controls. Of course, it's going to freak out at me right there because there's not a rig pose node, but you can put down a rig pose node and control these by hand before the solution if you want to have that manual input by hand. If we dive into the reverse foot node, we can see it's a nice setup of many complicated things that is essentially just a lot smarter version of what we did right here. So it's good to take advantage of. So let's talk about our FK chains. Right now, if we take a look at this skeleton, which we can even put into our bone to form now, I feel pretty confident in that. And you can of course put your main chain into your bone to form at any point you want to test it on the deform level. If we were to control our cog, we should see him bend perfectly as such. We can see his toes get stuck to the ground because that's where we're blending our chain from, right? Just on the ground. So it's good to know not to go beyond the bounds with this. Of course, if you wanted stretchy limbs, we should just be able to enable stretch on our two IKs here. And we can see that our IK chain now stretches. And it has some pretty good volume solving as well. So it doesn't just, I don't know, it actually stretches, maintains the volume instead of just spreading the verts out from one another. So if you want stretch, absolutely go for it. I'm going to turn it off for now though, since our character, I feel, is going to be more bound in space. So the point of moving the cog right now is to show that our feet maintain connection with the ground, which is how an IK system works, and we like that for IK. But an FK system, forward kinematics, moves from our hips down the chain. We don't maintain a position here. If we move the cog, we want to move everything down the chain from the cog, with the cog being our main parent. So we want to make sure when we're setting up our IK chain system, or sorry, our FK chain system, that it is moved after our cog, or at least follows our cog. So we want to make sure we grab our skeleton after the point of our cog moving. So if we get our delete joints now, and we grab our FK legs, we'll just call it delete FK legs. We want to grab all of our main points. We don't want to grab our twists to be able to be edited by hand. And we don't need our heels either, since our heels don't actually have any skin weight associated with them. We really only need these points. In fact, we don't even need our toes, since the ball of our foot really controls most of our toe. If you have individual toe joints and you have like a, I don't know, like a gorilla or even just a human with extreme detail on their toes, you might want to, you know, include that in your FK system if you want. But I only really need these points for my FK system. So we have those points now. All we need to do for an FK system is put down a rig pose node. And since our skeleton was built in FK, just going down the chain, we can control our skeleton right off the bat in FK, just like such. And if we look at this rig pose after the fact of posing our cog, just pulling it down, we look here at our rig pose, we can see that our FK chains were moved with that cog exactly how we wanted it to. So we were going in full forward kinematics the whole time, which is exactly what we want. Now all we need to do, if we want to, is connect some control geometry. So we'll call these FK leg controls. Perfect. I'm going to unpose this hip real quick. Awesome. FK leg controls, and we will create a new FK control here. Let's see, our circle is going to be a bit bigger, just so we can see it around our leg, no matter where we're looking at it from. That might be a good size, maybe a little bit bigger. Perfect. I'm going to make the FK control color just something different so we know it's an FK. Maybe something pink. I suppose our cog is pink, so a red might be good. We want to make sure we name this FK. And we'll add that to our library. Now when we put down a attach joint geo, just like anytime we add something to our control library, we can connect it in here. We can just keep the group at selecting everything if we want to here, since we know we want all of our joints to be controlled by FK. If you like it being this orientation of things, then great. We could just keep the the controls exactly how they are. I like to have it more on a parallel plane to the ground. So if I look at our skeleton here and just change what plane we're built on, I like to have my controls as such, so they're like rings around the geometry instead. Now we can grab them and control, just like we did with all of our other rig poses up to this point. So we'll rig pose attach join geo FK controls. Perfect. So we have a complete FK chain of things, and we can blend in our main chain again, just using a skeleton blend. Our main chain goes on the left, and our blend points go on the right. Now our main chain is set up to handle, we have an output of a main chain from our FK controls, and we can see all of our twist joints and that kind of stuff follow along how we want it to. Perfect. I'm going to color this red just to match our FK control colors. So we'll call this skeleton blend main and FK. Perfect. I feel there was a skeleton blend I didn't name. Here we go. So we're actually blending our reverse foot and main. Perfect. Now how do we blend between FK and IK if we want that ability? Which I like to set up in my rigs, the ability to control our character either from an FK point or an IK point. There's two ways we can do it, actually. One way is simply by creating a blend. So we can put down a skeleton blend. We have two outputs of main chains here. Our IK solved output of a main chain. So we have all of our joints there, and we have all of our joints here. So we can just put down a skeleton blend and actually blend between our positions without needing world space, because we have all of our main chains now. We can demonstrate by like posing with our cog, posing with that leg there, and we can see if I put this in here, right now we're blended towards our left side, which is our FKs. We can blend to our right side, which is our IKs. Easy as that. So that's one way we can set up a blend. And actually that's the way I would set up a blend between FK and IK. If maybe you have animators that are starting to animate in a non-spatial system, similar to that of how you can do in Unity with their rigging package, and how there's been some what's called freeform rigging in some freeform rigging packages. We can see Bungie talks about it, where they're able to switch space and bake down a skeleton animation and switch between FK and IK so that they don't have to worry about this position, this blending between the two things. They can just say, alright, I want this in this exact position to now be FK. With Houdini and with KinEffects, we can just package all of one side of things to be an HDA, right? Which we'll do in a second. We'll package all of this information that we've just built, all this leg data. We'll package it into an HDA, and we'll just call it general skeleton legs right now, cyborg skeleton legs. If you wanted to be able to do that space switching for Houdini, it's just as simple as, well, we'll just make one HDA the IKs, and we'll make one HDA the FKs, and whenever an animator is done using their IKs or whatever, they've gotten their IKs down, we can just put down a new FK node after the fact. And you can get these layers of animation data switching between IK and FK until the point where you get where either your animator or you get your animation to the point that you want it to be, interactively just switching what you're controlling and building the system off of your current skeleton without needing to worry about baking down the skeleton. Of course, with this thought process, you'll maybe get quite a number of IKs and FK nodes, HDAs, stacked up on top of each other. At that point, you'll maybe want to bake out your animation and kind of start fresh. And we'll discuss baking animations and doing all sorts of animation stuff with KinEffects when we get there later in this course. But I just wanted to explain those two kind of thought processes for setting up a blend between our IKs and our FKs. For now, we're just going to stick with a truly traditional blend, where in something like in something like Maya, we would just see this as a system of maybe parent constraints or orientation constraints, and we're just turning off and on the different constraints to follow our different chains. So this is a very traditional kind of Uber rig is what it's been called, might be known, kind of setup where we blend our skeleton as such. So now we have all of our aspects that we wanted for our legs, or that I set out to teach for this Introduction to KineFX course. And we'll start to package this all into an HDA so that we can see the process of placing these HDAs down when we need them for however we want them.